Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Marina Perry Podcast. I am your host, Marina Perry. Yes, my voice is husky as heck today. Bear with me, and luckily you're going to get to hear from an amazing guest, the beautiful, sublime, magical Kristie Ord. And we are going to be diving into a really juicy topic. Are you ready for it? It's all about managing the mayhem and the magic of more. This is a woman who has, in the eyes of many, achieved the impossible inside of a time frame that's ridiculous, but has continued to expand and expand her capacity for creation, for identity shifting, for transitioning. And I cannot wait for her to share her wisdom with us. So we'll unpack what Kristie does in the world, but amongst many things, she is a mother, a CEO, and an amazing leader of a very successful community of entrepreneurs. So Kristie, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yay, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Now, before we dive into managing the mayhem and the magic of more, tell me what would be the animal that best represents your personality, your way of being in the world?
A lion.
A lion? Why?
I feel like lions are like fierce and they just like go for what they want. So yeah.
I love it. Okay, cool. I think there's a lot of people who would 100% agree with that assessment of you. You have seriously created amazing transformation, which leads to my next question. If you had a superpower, which I feel like you do, but if you had a superpower, which one would you choose?
Oh, superpower. Well, considering I always complain about being stuck in traffic whenever I'm stuck in traffic, I'd say teleporting, which I actually feel like we do have available to us, but I'm just like waiting for that to actually be our reality,
I love that. I could agree. I think particularly when people are very, very full in their lives, the little things that feel like they're taking away time we could be creating with feels like a waste in some ways. So yeah, teleportation, I back you on that. Okay, so Kristie, let's dive straight in. For the listeners who weren't at our growth gathering or don't follow you on all your amazing different platforms, which of course we'll link to all of those in the show notes, can you give the new to Kristie listener a rundown of the magic that you are, your particular story, and how you came to be, I feel, such a huge representation of the truth of transformational change?
Yes. Okay, so the kind of short version of my very long journey is that I very much followed the normal way, I guess, that everyone's taught to live. Go to school, go to university, get a good job. And I did all of that. I was very focused on, getting the best grades possible and getting the best job and working in the high rise and doing the 9 to 5 and climbing the corporate ladder. And I did that, and I realized that was not actually the life for me. And I was like super frustrated because I'm like, hang on, I've just spent like 5 years at university and now I've like been chasing this thing that isn't actually even the dream. And I came across this guy who was, living in Hawaii. He was Australian. He was doing everything that he loved to do. He was making like $30,000 a month on the internet. And I was like, that's more than a CEO makes. Like, what on earth is going on? And it was really interesting because what unfolded from there was I read Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek. And I was like, oh my God, there's this whole other life out there. And there's all these people that like actually like become like create their dream life and become entrepreneurs and do all these cool things and travel the world. And I didn't even, I knew that obviously people started businesses, but I just didn't really ever think outside the box that type of life was available. And I remember I was like 22 and I was like, I need to leave my job. And I ended up just walking, I just walked in one day to the office and I was like, I'm out. And I had no savings. I had no backup plan. And I went through, I guess, a very big transformation at that point in my life of breaking up with my partner and all sorts of things. And I went on this journey of, my whole desire was to create the life of my dreams and to figure out what that actually looks like. And and I went to like all these seminars and I started to, hang around people that thought differently and had a different mindset that I'd ever been around before, and that were actually really going for what they desired in their life. And I'm like, okay, well, if there's all these people out there that are like up to all this cool stuff, like I can be one of them, like I can do that as well. And I started to create different businesses. And, I thought it was going to be as easy as just, you create a business and then you live with freedom. Like I was like, cool, I want to be free. I want to travel the world. I want to do all these cool things. And I had no idea what the journey was that was ahead of me and the reality, I guess, of getting into business, etc. But I got into business and I started different businesses and, I had a lot of failures along the way. I was sharing at the School of Growth night that I spoke at. One of the incidences was I was like importing blenders and juicers and working with this manufacturer, and I'd paid $10,000 up front, and what came was one pair of fake sunglasses. And so, I had many different failures. That wasn't the only failure. There was a lot of things that I did along my journey where I had to learn a lot of lessons. And I got to a place where one of my businesses was a traditional business, and it was a cafe where I was supporting people to become the healthiest version of themselves. And I was making all this impact, yet I was barely covering my own like personal rent at home, let alone like my suppliers and staff and all of this. And I was working 18-hour days. And even though I was making a huge impact, my health was struggling. And I'm like, well, I can't be like supporting others with their health if I'm burning myself into the ground and, doing all these things when I'm not actually thriving. I'm not creating any type of freedom or anything like that. And I ended up having a full nervous breakdown. I had really bad adrenal fatigue and like literally went home to live with my parents at 26 and was just like, what on earth am I doing with my life? And that was where I really started to ask myself some big questions. Like, if I was really truly living the life that I deeply desire, what does that look like? And if I was living my perfect day, what does that look like? And if I was impacting the way I truly desire, what does that look like? And I started to really ask myself, what is my vision for my life? All of these things that I guess I wasn't really super clear on up until that point. And it was about 3.5 years ago where I was kind of still in, like, my life had improved a little bit. Like, I'd definitely come out of some of the deep struggle that I was in, but I was still in the same place of always being really broke. Like, even when I met my partner, he was just this mirror version of me. He was really broke. I was really broke. We were driving around in a bomb of a car. We were getting like evicted from our apartment because we weren't paying the rent on time. All these things were kind of kept manifesting in my life, and I could like never get my account more than $1,000. And I just really struggled with money and understanding money and how to actually receive money. And it was 3.5 years ago that we had a baby on the way, our first child on the way. And we really didn't know how we were even going to support that child. Like, at the time, I was creating different programs online and I was running different webinars, and I was really trying to make this breakthrough of like really this transformation that I knew that I deeply desired, and to come out the other side of it. Yet I just wasn't getting there. Like, something wasn't working, and I just was in this entrepreneurial hamster wheel. And so that was really, I guess, where we drew a line in the sand. And I always talk about this moment in our transformational journey where we kind of get to a point where enough is enough. And we get sick of like repeating the same things over and over, the same beliefs, the same patterns, the same self-sabotage things. And we get to a point where like, hang on a second, like, I just really got to back myself, and I've really got to believe in myself, and I really need to go all in. And so, yeah, we literally like drew a line in the sand of like, I'm done. Like, I'm done with this old way of showing up and being the person that's broke all the time, being the person that can never afford anything all the time, being the person that, like, just keeps showing up in this way. And that was where we really decided to make a massive change in our life. And we committed to this 90-day, we created it like ourselves. We didn't have a coach or anything that was kind of taking us through this, but we committed to really go all in on every area of our life, mainly like business and money, for 90 days in order to create a transformation and a breakthrough, so that we weren't in a position where we didn't know how to even bring up a child by the time our baby arrived. And so in that 90 days, we went from literally broke. I remember we were staying at a friend's house, like eating out of her fridge because we couldn't actually afford to even buy food. This is literally 3.5 years ago. And we went from that version of ourselves to, we created $120,000 in 90 days. And then we went on to create a 7-figure business in like, I think it was like 6 to 8 months. And then since then we've created 3 7-figure businesses and a multi-6-figure e-commerce business. And we literally live now the life that we always dreamt of. I remember going to sleep and I would dream of where I would live, and I would be dreaming of impacting all these people. And I dream of everything that I do today, like the people that I have in my life, everyone that I surround myself with, where I live, how I spend my day, or everything that I would once go to bed dreaming of has come to fruition. And so it's been a big transformation in terms of a lot of different identity shifts, Maiden, just like Maiden to mother, and that whole shift, the broke person to creating all of this success in a short amount of time, that identity shifts. There's been a lot of different transformations within the journey.
Yes, my gosh. Excuse my voice, team. I really apologize. But I actually wanted to touch on a few things as you shared that story that I'd love the listener to kind of really hear again, because sometimes we hear these stories. And so I want to take you back, Kristie, to when you said that you were working the 9 to 5, you'd done all the right things, you ticked all the boxes, and yet you were like, shit, is this all there is? And now you walked in and you were 22. Perhaps that's why you did it, because you were young enough that you had nothing to lose. But someone listening who's like, well, I'm kind of happy, but I really think there is more. How do they know? How would you say, what was the big tell for you that what was the feelings or the knowing inside of yourself that it's this is not the life that I was put on earth to live, that made you jump ship? Do you know what I mean? That made you cut the ties? Was it a feeling of just constant frustration? What was the energy or the feeling that maybe someone can relate to go, okay, maybe there's something for me to look at here?
Yeah, my intuition was really just very, very strongly guiding me to, this is just not the life. It was almost like when we have voices in our head or we feel something, right? It's I just kept getting this message over and over and over of this isn't the life that I should be living. It's just, this isn't the life for me. I'm here for more. And, I tried to ignore it. I tried to be no, but I've done all of this work and I've been, building all of this, but I had to actually really back myself in those moments.
So it's listening to that inner voice. And I agree with you, because much the same way, a degree in aviation, ducks to my degree, and just realized at the end, I don't want to be a pilot. I don't want to be a pilot. But then I'd done so well, quote unquote, that it's how dare you not be a pilot? But you do have to listen to your soul. So I love that. So if anyone out there is on a soul level, you're not aligned, just jump. And then I want to lead to the next thing that you shared, which is you went into new containers. So notice that Kristie said she went to seminars, she learned from people who think differently. She stepped into a whole new world and a way of viewing it. And then that shifts your world, doesn't it? Because it's if they can, it's kind of like the 4-minute mile. If they can do it, maybe I can do it too. So it opens up capacity and opportunity and belief, which I am a huge, this proponent for. Your ecology is perhaps the most important thing. But I love what you then next shared, which I don't want people to miss, which is that you went through a period of struggle and failure. And I love that you shared about entrepreneurialism, that it wasn't just sunshine and rainbows, that you actually almost went into a harder working environment with less return, because I think a lot of people are oh, just be an entrepreneur and that'll solve all the issues. And that's not the case. And sometimes we end up working harder for less. But you learned a lot, I'm sure, in those failures as well. And that ultimately, from what I heard you say, is it took you to that point. That was the point from which you pivoted permanently. It took you down into that, not anymore, I'm going to stand for something different. And then the change happened. And I want to ask you, or I feel because I've had those moments too, and they've often come after a really big tumble. But I've come to realize as my life has gotten better and better, but I still reach those moments where I have to create the changes, that we can have that line in the stand moment, any moment of any ordinary day. You can just kind of decide, right? That no more, not on my watch, my life deserves better of me, and just call forward a higher version of yourself.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah, like it just gets to be, and like enough is enough. You get to choose that now. It doesn't actually have to get to a pain such a place of pain. And I think, like, for me, how I used to operate was that, I would wait for things to get so bad before I would do anything about it.
Yeah, me too.
Health, I had a lot of issues with my health, and things got so bad that then I was like, cool, I need to make a change. And then I almost went like this extreme opposite. And it's like, we don't actually need to operate like that. We get to like really just be like, okay, cool. Like, am I really playing am I really like playing the big game? Am I really playing the game here that like I'm actually on track to my vision, and am I clear on what my vision is for my life? Do I have purpose in my life? Am I clear on what I really want my life to look like? And am I in alignment with that? Meaning, like, am I taking the steps forward every day? Not just sort of saying I am, but like, am I actually in the arena doing the things or not? And if you're not, like, I mean, I know there's a lot of people, say, that I support in our community, for example, that they show up to trainings, for example. They'll be, watching masterclasses, which are great. Like, it's great to watch trainings, and it's great to feed your mindset, and it's great to listen to, people that have, created really great change. That stuff's really great. But if we're not like moving the needle forward in terms of doing the things, like being courageous in our day, like taking the risks, like really showing up, putting ourselves out there, like actually building a business and doing the things that are going to support that, then we're not going to be able to create the change that we desire. And it's always going to be like, it's just a hobby, or you're going to say that you're doing something, but you're not really. And that's really important that we just decide, because that was like me, like I was like, but I'm doing everything, I'm showing up, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I'm like, but if I really tuned into myself 3.5 years ago, I'm like, nah, like I wasn't. There was a part of me that didn't want like people to not like me, and so that meant I wouldn't speak my truth. Like, there was so many different things that I was sort of kidding myself. And then I got to this point where I'm like, I just got to stop kidding myself, and I've actually got to start getting really real and actually noticing that I'm not on track right now. I'm not fully all in to creating the life that I want to live.
I think like that's a mic drop, because what you're saying is super important. Vision is critical, but a lot of people have the vision but don't back it up with the action. And as we know, like, when you get clear on the vision, get clear on the you that's brought that vision about, and then be them now. Do the things that they would do now. And I think perhaps the biggest obstacle for a lot of the high achievers who are listening to this podcast, who are saying, I'm doing all the things, is that radical honesty with yourself, where you really genuinely call bullshit and you say, if I was really, because here's the thing, right? If they're listening, we're that magical that if we were doing all the actual things, we'd already have the thing. We'd already have the result. Because you are talented enough, you are smart enough, clever enough to overcome any quote unquote obstacle. So if it's not showing up, there's something that's not being actioned, embodied, allowed. There is something else. Because as you said, you were doing quote unquote all the things, but when you actually started doing all the things, the results were transformational. 120K in like a month or whatever you said, or 90 days. And just to be clear for people listening, like 7 figures is $1 million. Like, I feel that we hear the 7-figure, 6-figure stuff, and we're very disassociated from that. But to have a business that turns over $1 million in a year, that's a substantial transformation from not enough money to pay for rent, and on multiple layers. So I love what you're sharing here, Kristie. But what I want to know is, apart from vision and action, what had to happen? Because you mentioned identity shifts. So speak to us about that. Like, what do we have to really, like, this is the inner work, right? Because we can be doing the do. How much does identity play a role in true transformation and calling in more to your life? Like, what does that mean when you shared that before?
Yeah. So like, for example, when I was like, I remember when I was like really broke, I was like, I started asking myself a question: who do I need to become in order to like receive, 6 or 7 figures? Who do I need to become? Like, what actions do I need to be taking? What is the mindset that I need to be adopting? If an opportunity shows up in my life, am I gonna, that I really, my soul's pulling me to do, am I gonna say no to that because I'm really scared and I want to be safe, or am I gonna say yes because that's what my soul's like really pulling me to do? you know, everything, I started to really question that. Like, you know, I needed to break the identity that I had been showing up as up until that point, and I needed to choose a new identity. And so, you know, just like little things that would support me, like it's a very simple thing, but it actually made a big difference in my life. I used to like wash and blow dry my own hair, and I used to like color my own hair, right? And I would spend hours like with the packet mixes and doing this because I wanted to save money. And I was like, okay, like how would and so this was like one of the starting points. I was like, how the, you know, multiple 6-7 figure version of me show up. And I'd be like, I said, okay, well, I would go to a hairdresser and I would get my blow dry done. I'd get my hair colored and I'd make back the money sitting in the seat, you know, and I'd just like trust that I'm fully provided for and I can say yes to the things I want to be saying yes to, and not spending all this time trying to clean the house all the time or do my hair or whatever that's actually taking up so much of my time, but I could be investing that time into actually making money. And so I started to do little things like that, like even with a cleaner, I started to get a cleaner because I don't like cleaning. And I'm like, okay, well, I could spend literally $40, you know, an hour or whatever, get them in for 2 hours for a week or even every fortnight. That's gonna take off so much pressure of my time, and I can make back that money really easily in that time. So that's what I would do. That's the sort of starting point that I started to do. I'd like go to the hair so once a fortnight, get my blow dry, but I'd be like, cool, my test to myself is to make back the $40. So I'd do that. I'd sit there, get my hair done, and I'd like, because I'm like, cool, all right, like I'm gonna do this. And like it's just such a like silly little example, but it made a really big difference in my life because I'm like, okay, I need to shift the identity, I need to shift the decisions, and I need to shift the actions, and need to shift what I'm doing so that I can actually like quantum leap that old version and become the new version of myself and become the highest version of myself, the one that's not scared all the time, the one that's not in fear all the time, the one that's not in lack and scarcity all the time. And I really need to choose that version now. And so one of the things that I constantly teach people is like, become the version of you now, even when the bank account doesn't show it. You know, even if the bank account like is zero, you still get to choose a different identity. And when you choose the different identity, that is going to support the direction you're actually wanting to go in your life, and you start to make decisions from that place, then you're going to literally quantum leap, which really just means like accelerate, like time doesn't even matter. Like you can literally just like bring everything together now in order to become that version. I feel like that's why we shifted so rapidly and so quickly, is like, yes, we had a massive why and a reason, you know, because we had a child on the way, and that was kind of our line in the sand moment. Yeah. But I also feel it was because we started to show up as the version of us that was like rocking it and, you know, making all the money and doing all the things, even when we didn't have that. And that supported us to receive at a more rapid pace.
But also, you know, 3.5 years is remarkable to have had 2 children, because you now have 2, and to have created so many successful, profitable businesses. But just, I want to ask, and I suppose a part of me is presuming, but everything that you did up until then, and this is the thing about overnight successes or very quick transformations, is there was a lot of learning that went up until that moment too, right? A lot of trial and errors and kind of embodied learning and frustration and overcoming and more embodied learning, so that when you hit that moment, your trajectory is quantum fast, but that's because you've got all this rocket fuel of learnings and understandings and already mindset shifts. So you're ready and geared to go. So do you agree with that, firstly?
Of course. Yeah. Of course.
Yeah. And so if someone is listening and they're like, well, I still feel like I'm struggling, maybe these are the learnings that you really do need to pull apart, piece together. And if you just keep leaning in, once that's cleared enough, you'll just go like trajectory off and away. Because the you know, the alchemization or the intersection of all of the things will come, and it'll just flow because you stayed in the game.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, it's interesting because sometimes people are like, oh, I was an overnight success. And I'm like, I'm not an overnight success. Like, no, like, this was, you know, many years in the making. And yeah, I had to, you know, I remember like I would try and do webinars and no one would show up. I'd try and launch things and no one would buy. Like, I didn't just kind of just quit my job and then become this person that I am today. It was from a lot of like setbacks and trial and error and failing and,
keeping
learning,
on
being
going.
being in the arena, learning.
Yeah.
Like the only way we're gonna be able to do anything, like even with like leadership, for example, the only, like, it's great you can know leadership skills, but if you're not in the arena leading yourself each day and leading others each day, you're not really going to fully be embodied in leadership and what that actually means. So it's like putting yourself, I love that. Like Brene Brown talks about being in the arena, and it's like, I love that because, that's where the magic happens. As long as you're in the arena and you're following like the next steps and the path and all of that. And yeah, like choosing the highest version of yourself in each day, and being prepared to work on the things that don't serve you so that you can, remove any limiting beliefs and remove any patterns that keep showing up in your life. And like, that's real self-awareness. Like if you're self-aware on your journey and you're overcoming the things that are showing up for you to heal and to, work on, then that's amazing. And it's like, this is all part of it. All of this is a build up to any transformation. And then one day you're probably going to be like, all right, I've got this. All these pieces have now fallen into place. I've got the belief, I've got the confidence. Yeah. I've got this. I'm doing it, from all of the times you've been showing up in the past.
Yes. And I think, growth work and inner work works like that. It's like you're the seed in the soil. And initially from the outside looking in, it's like, guys, not a lot's happening. She's been talking about growth work for a really long time. Can't see much evidence of it. And then suddenly it's like through that soil, and then the tree, is sprouting fruit in the next few years. So yeah, just stay the course for anyone listening. Now, Kristie, you have literally transformed identities from, you said yourself, broke to abundant, into leadership roles. I mean, you have huge communities that follow you, and motherhood. So I'm curious, like when you feel into these last few years, what were the beliefs that had to get rewritten in particular to allow so much into your world? Because, any one of those things individually is a big thing, but you've done all of them simultaneously. So I'm just curious, like, what do you think what was the areas within yourself that you really did have to go to town on? What, I don't know, potentially limits, or what did you have to open to? Any way you want to take that, but if you can really share with us how you think you managed to transition and still be with us through all of that.
Yeah, so money was a big thing for me. Like in order to actually receive more money, I needed to like be able to believe I could hold more than $1,000 in my account, because I'd never even been able to do that before. So at that point of my life, it was like, okay, cool. Like I needed to investigate what was my money story and my belief. And I realized I was carrying some really limiting things around money that really didn't serve me, and that I could be taking all of the action steps, for example, but if I was still carrying this stuff around money, then I'm not going to be able to receive money. And I never knew, a lot of people don't know we actually even have like beliefs around money, right? Or a money story, or, there's not really a normal conversation that we have or we're aware of until we get to a point in our life where we might start to hear that in the personal development world, etc. But that was some big beliefs that I needed to overcome. Like I really needed to overcome things like, who am I to be a leader, or who am I to, impact other people's life? And, I don't, like, I'm not special, or, just like these things, I guess, that were there for me that I'm like, because the vision like was really big. Like I was like, I could see myself on, really big stages, and really, a lot of people constantly saying how much I've changed their life, and, me living this awesome life. Like that was really the vision, but I'm like, but who am I to live that life? Like I'm no one special. I'm just like an everyday person. And that's the thing that now, like, people are like, oh, but, like, can everyday people just do what you did? And I'm like, yes, I'm an everyday person. Like, there is nothing different to me than there is to anybody else. Like, I just feel like I'm now a permission slip for just like everyday people to just rise and to give themselves permission that they actually can live the life that they're really here to live. So I did a lot of work around money, like every day. I was always listening to some of the books that I really love is You're a Badass at Making Money from Jen Sincero, Happy Pocket Full of Money. I would have that on audio. I would look at different YouTube stuff on abundance and money, and I started to feed my mind with different audio. And I started to be like, oh, like, okay, cool. Like I really, like things started to sink in for me. And I would journal every day. You know, I had a very, very strong morning routine where, you know, I would do what I call the money dance. And I'd be like, I love money and money loves me. And I'd just like shout it from the rooftop. And I'd like, that became like this mantra. And, you know, I would journal, I would, you know, write out affirmations and, like one of them was, I receive over $5,000 in my account each day. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And like, I mean, I was the person that couldn't receive more than $1,000 in my account. So how do I go and leap from that to $5,000 a day in my account? And that became my reality within a very short amount of time. Like I'm talking, I started to write that out and get clear on that. It's not just writing it out like either. Yeah. It's like, you really got to be in the embodiment of that work and be like deeply like, cool, like I'm actually training my mind to believe this, you know? So I would sit there like really presently. I wouldn't just be like doing something else on my phone and then writing a few things. It's like, you've got to be present and really like be in the work. And I started to write that out and that became my reality. Like everything that I was writing out was becoming my reality very quickly in my life because I was just becoming really clear that these are the beliefs that I'm choosing to adopt and these are the mantras that I'm choosing to adopt. And that started to really shift my life. Yes, I worked with different NLP practitioners and, you know, energy healers and hypnotherapists and stuff as well. Like I was like actively investing into that. But just from my own daily work and a really powerful routine, my days seemed to be far more powerful than ever before. And I started to intentionally create my days rather than my days kind of just happening and then that being in control of me. Like I started to take control of my days and my thoughts and my beliefs.
So I want to pause and just really ask you, because I love that you're sharing this. I'm really sorry about my voice, team. It's frustrating.
It sounds hot.
It's very husky. So, because when you said you realized you had beliefs like, who am I to be a leader? Who am I to have that much money? I know that that's very alive for almost every human on the planet, right? And then I love that you shared that you dived into new belief work and you adopted it, and then you did affirmations, and you wrote them down, and you kind of, it sounds like you're really committed to committing to new beliefs. But I'm curious, like, was there ever a time, or someone listening might go, oh my gosh, I get what she's saying, write it down and believe it. But that secondary thought might be like, well, that's not going to happen, or that's not true for me. Like, how did you, because obviously when you started to see it happening, which is that magnetization due to the coherence of the energy you were being, but I suppose I would love to know, was it just that you committed, and how did you start to believe the new beliefs? That's what I'd love to know.
I just decided. I was like, I just started to believe that beliefs could be changed in an instance.
Yes, well, they can. So yeah, that's cool. But you just decided, I can just change this belief and that will change my reality, and that why was strong enough. So you just decided, which to a lot of people just listening, FYI, will sound like, well, you just decided to be delusional because that wasn't your reality up until then. But what I'd love everyone to consider is your reality is only what you choose to believe. So by choosing your beliefs differently, you are choosing a new reality, and it can actually, as Kristie's just very clearly illustrated, be that simple, and then life reflects it back to you and makes you right. So I love that. I love that. And then what about, so the money was a big thing, and obviously that allowed more to flow to you. And I love what you shared about receiving, because I think that's a big wound for a lot of, well, I'm going to say women in particular, because women historically have not been entitled through culture to, for a long time at least, hold and value of their own. So receiving money is something that we actually do need to learn, many of us, not all of us. How did you, once you started to have the money coming, how did you be okay with keeping it? Because that's a whole nother experience, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's interesting because I didn't keep it very well. I actually went and spent most of it on travel and did everything I wanted to do, which some people would be like, and that obviously was also a part of my belief, because I didn't actually create new beliefs to hold on to large sums of money.
Yeah.
my belief was more that I could make lots of money.
Yeah.
But then what happened was, especially with that like first million that we made, I mean, we just like, we had a great time. We like travel the world business class, like, and I'm so grateful because obviously this year has been like lockdown and no one's been able to travel, and I'm so freaking grateful that I did that, and I really just like did what I wanted to do. You know, we hired convertibles in Vegas, and you know, we like had a great time. We freaking lived it up, and you know, we stayed in 5-star places where it was like sometimes, you know, $2,000 a night, and we just did it. Like, and you know, I did reach this point where I started to feel really guilty about that. I'm like, I've just made all this money and I'm like spending it all. And, you know, and then that's where I had to like, I realized like, I don't have a thing yet around like holding on to money and keeping large sums of money. So that was a whole different thing I needed to work on. But like even that guilt that was coming up, I had a coach, a really amazing, powerful coach that just really supported me to see like what did actually my soul just really need in those moments. And I'm like, I needed to travel. Like I needed to get this out of that's always what my husband and I wanted to do together. But we were always so broke. And we wanted to do like live this awesome, like go and do all these things. And I'm like, I did it. Like I'm so grateful that I did all of that. But then it was the belief, you know, that got to change was around keeping money and being able to reinvest money and hold large sums of money and all of that. So that was a whole different journey ahead now. And, you know, now it's like I actually live quite simply. You know, I still have all the luxuries. I do what I want when I want. Like that hasn't changed in any way, but I sort of live a little bit more. You know, at first when I went from like broke to really to making all this money, it was kind of like I was just like spending it on whatever and anything that I could. And now it's kind of like I don't have the need to like actually spend a lot of money. Like I'm kind of like, I actually really thrive off just living quite a simple life. But making money and reinvesting money. And like I've just bought land inland from Byron. And just being able to do like, for me, like looking at like really smart things with money now, you know, like reinvesting into different things and businesses and all sorts of stuff to actually make money grow more for me. Yeah.
So it's like everything, we develop a level of mastery and then there's another level of mastery beyond that. Yeah. So talk to me about Maiden to motherhood for you inside this other world that's changing and transforming. What's that been like, Kristie? Because I feel that I feel like there's been a return to the acknowledgement in some spaces within society that it's a big shift. And I feel like we need more of that. You know, a lot of women have babies and just keep surging forward in their masculine energy. And yet there is something that shifts when we go from pre-motherhood to being a mum. How has it been for you? What have you learned on the way?
Yeah, I've actually found the whole maiden to mother thing quite a difficult journey. I didn't feel I was really ready to have kids when I started having children. And I adore being a mum. I absolutely adore it. But it's actually been a very big adjustment period for me to become a mother. And actually, it wasn't until I had my second child 6 months ago that I actually really felt like I became a mother. I still was living almost in this maiden energy. Even with a child, I really rejected and pushed away being a mum, which has been, you know, also a perfect part of my story and my journey. But for me, like, it's interesting. I do think there needs to be more awareness, and I'm so glad there is more awareness now on that transition, because it is a huge transition. It's a huge thing to go from, you know, living your life with just yourself and being able to choose in every moment with your time and your energy what you're doing, to then having like kids having tantrums and you know, like I was really looking forward to going to this mastermind the other day, and my son, it freaks out about the rain and storms and was having literally like meltdown after meltdown after meltdown. Like, you know, when not enough people talk about like the real stuff of motherhood. Like it's pretty crazy and hectic at times, you know. So and then throwing in like a business on top of that and all that. I found it. I found that journey that was actually far more difficult for me personally than like going from broke to, you know, receiving lots of money. It's been a real journey for me to adjust to being a mother and how to be a mother, and, you know, and also like for me, and what I see with mums, that they don't oftentimes give themselves permission to give themselves time. Like for me, that's one thing through my journey as a mother that's a non-negotiable. Like I'm like, I can't be with my children 24/7. Like I'm not the mum at home that's doing all the baking and all of that. So I call upon like what resources can support me, so we have a nanny in place, and we have different things in place to support our life, so that yes, when I'm with my children 100% I'm present, and I'm with my baby girl a lot during the day, but that I'm taking time for me, because that's really important for me to be the best version of a mother that I can be to my children, is to have that time to me.
I think that in our society, this is perhaps the greatest growth for women around motherhood, is this collective releasing of the shaming around still being an individual. Like when you come into motherhood, you're still, the mistress, the maiden, all of it, right? The goddess. And then we step into motherhood, and those parts don't just die, nor should they die. But we have this kind of selfless martyrdom that our society often reveres. Oh, she's so good. She puts everything, secondary to her children. And I think that's an option. And I think, much like you said, in your life, you get to hold a vision of what life do you want to create. I think when we come into motherhood, it's really important to drop in and go, what do I envision for myself around motherhood? What kind of mother do I want to be? How do I want to do that dance? What feels good to my soul? And then calling in the support where and if you need it to make that happen. Because we're not alone, even though we are the mother, the singular mother. Back in the day, I think the thing we lack in the modern era is we don't have the village and the tribe and the community that we used to. And, the saying, it takes a village, I think is really true. And I think children benefit from mothers that are multifaceted in their identity. I think children benefit from communication, interactions, and being cared for by more people. It's literally more learnings, and it's more love. It's more love. It's more experiences of safety. And we obviously need that secure connection with mum and dad as well. So it's a yes and conversation. But I love that you're being honest about that. And as also a fellow entrepreneur, wild, free, gypsy spirited, and, woman who is also very grateful to be a mother of two beautiful children, it's a dance. And it doesn't mean the guilt, for me, especially as I moved through, particularly my divorce was probably the hardest time to re-alchemize for me, the amount of guilt that I got laid on me for the way that I managed that, and the fact that I kept working. At some point you do, I don't know if you found this to be true, you just have to go inward to your own compass of truth and really lay yourself down at the altar of all of that projection of shame and blame, and then rise as a phoenix in your own awareness of what's true for you. Because what I've come to realize around motherhood is it isn't like we need to ascend the guilt. The guilt's it's probably going to be there because it's systemic, it's societal, it's conditioned into us. But it's like, feel the guilt and do it anyway, and just keep strengthening that muscle, because it generally will lead to an abundance of your soul. And that's how we serve our children. That's how we serve our children. And I've often thought to myself, like, do I want to raise my girls to silence their soul and, fit the measure of society? Or do I want them to always know that they can be safe with themselves, because they'll always hold their truth as the North Star? Yeah. You know what I mean? And so when we face off with this as mothers and talk about it and own it, we're giving them, even if it's not a conscious awareness, we're giving them permission to start to live lives like that. And I think that's of service to our children, perhaps in a way more powerful way than always sacrificing for them.
Totally. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So transitioning identities and stepping into transformation, what do you think are the biggest blocks to the people out there who are like, I don't really love my job. I'm definitely not honoring my truth. I don't take time for myself. I know I could be doing, like, how does someone who's like, oh, Kristie, I just want to fast forward 3.5 years and be where you are and have done what you've done. But we know that's not possible. So what are the top 3 tips, or where should they start if someone's like, help me help myself, help me help myself, Kristie. And I feel you've already shared tons of tips around it, but what would you distill it down to? Like, what are the things that looking back, you're like, these were essential? And if it's 2, it's 2. If it's 5, share what really feels like, guys, get on these things.
Yes, environment, definitely. So surrounding yourself with people that believe something different to what you've believed before. And whether that's mindset through audio, whether it's listening to an audio book, whether it's actually going to seminars, you know, things like School of Growth, whether it's, you know, putting yourself in a different environment. That has been absolutely foundational and key for my journey. That's non-negotiable. And, you know, like even right now, I'm feeling a little stagnant in my life. Like I've just like been for the last 6 months, like working from home and I have my child and, you know, I'm just like, I'm like, it's cool, great. But like, I'll need to shake up the energy. So I'm like, whenever I feel like that, I'm like, I need to be in a different environment, you know? And so like now I'm actually going to go to, even though I work, like I'm so about working from home, I'm going to go to an office space for the next month to get some stuff done and be around other entrepreneurs where they meet like every Monday and every Friday. And I'm going to actually be around other people. That excites me right now, shaking up the energy and shaking up your environment. So that's key. That's really, really key. Second of all is definitely the inner work and really like committing to a path of self-awareness and really being able to work on the things that are presenting itself for you. You know, like where our life is where it is for a reason, and there's work to do if we want to improve. You know, even when we create the dream life, okay, there's going to be work, there's still going to be things that pop up, right? Like I'm in more growth now than I was even back then, and I'm working with different mentors, etc. So yeah, really taking like radical responsibility of our self-awareness and actually like investing into coaches, mentors, you know, support, etc. that is going to support us to move forward. Because if we just try and figure everything out ourselves, it, you know, is potentially going to slow the journey. And that, like, I feel like that's a really big one, is people don't want to invest in themselves because, you know, of money, etc. But it's like, honestly, every story I hear, like all the time, from people that have kind of made it or whatever, you know, whatever that looks like, is that they were the people that, you know, they had no money and they, you know, they you know, had $20 in their account, and then they went to a Tony Robbins event or they went to this thing and then they're really inspired to do it. And, you know, they're like, but how am I going to do it? And they find a way out of no way. And they create this for the first time in their life. They create a way to do something when there isn't logically a way. And that's been huge for me. Like, putting myself in environments and then saying yes to things that are going to support my journey. Because it's not even just about them being in that space of working with the mentor or the coach or maybe doing the 3-day seminar or whatever it is. It's you taking the actions to make that happen is the big thing. You know, that's actually that's the courageous step. That's the taking the risk. Like, entrepreneurs take risks every day. Like, I'm taking risks all the time, you know, and that becomes a part of your life when you become an entrepreneur. You're taking risks. You're always acting with like resilience and courage, etc. So that's really, really key, is like almost investing in yourself before you even think that you're ready, and following the nudges and following the yes when it feels like a yes, and not being scared because there might only be a certain amount in your account. Because the thing is, we're so powerful to create a different reality in any moment, but oftentimes we don't just get out of our own way in order to create it. So that would be a tip. And then, yeah, what else? Like, I mean, there's so many, right? There's so many.
Well, while you think about it, I'm going to jump on and just say, because I know from conversations that we've had before, you and I, and I'm sure many others, are huge investors in our personal development, like huge. Sometimes in ways that would scare people with how much money we invest. But what that I think serves beyond like a realization of success and change in your outer world is this peace and grace in your inner world, so that even when shit goes quote unquote wrong outside, you're all good. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is the thing about investing in inner work and growth work. There is no better return on investment because it can never be stolen from you. Your evolution, your unfolding back to a calm and centered space of your soul is the most valuable freedom there is. And so I just wanted to really highlight the value of what you're saying there, because it isn't just about doing that to get those outcomes, which they're going to lead to anyway, because you're less in your way, as you said. But it also means that if all the shit hit the fan, you're going to be totally fine, because you're going to know your worth beyond that external gratification of achievement. Those two are, I mean, they're brilliant. So if there's nothing else there, don't worry, because I want to ask another question. And I know
ask another question, because there's so many, but it's like they're the two biggest ones, I would say.
So I want to speak to what I feel is, you know, admittedly, you have multiple 7-figure and high 6-figure businesses, and you have 2 children, and you also have your own health and your own personal development. But I feel that on many levels, lots of people can relate to this. Like, all these plates spinning, all these balls in the air, all these hats we're wearing. And I wanted to ask you, you know, have you ever kind of struggled or kind of reached a point where you've had to learn new skills that have perhaps afforded you a new level of mastery? Like, how are you staying in your magic? How are you staying in your flow now that you have even more pots on the boil? If I could throw any more metaphors in there, I think I would have done really well. There was a lot, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I'm grateful because I have a really good team. You know, like, foundations are really important in a business. And at first you can kind of feel like you're wearing all of the hats. You know, I've definitely through the last 3.5 years, and before that when I had businesses, I was wearing many different hats. And, you know, I did reach, you know, points of burnout and the hustle. And then, you know, realizing I needed to take 5 days off because I was just completely worn out and couldn't do anymore. And, you know, like, I've been through all of that. It's all part of my journey. But I'm really grateful now that, like, literally everything runs with or without me. So I know, like, my seasons that I work in, and when I need to really step into my businesses and actually really be in the trenches with the team. And I also know when it's time for me to back off and allow them to do their thing. So at any season, I always have a team now that are running everything for me, so that I can be kept, like, freed up to be the visionary and to be the ideas person and to be the creative person. And then when there is requirements for me to really step in, like right now actually is a time in my business where I'm stepping back in. I've just come out of, you know, a lot of months of downtime of, you know, working 1 to 2 hours a day max. And it's been great. And that's what my soul needed. It's what my body needed. And that's been perfect. And my businesses have all kept going and growing. And now I'm actually like, cool, like, my season now is that I'm stepping in to really be in there with, like, my communities and the people to, you know, really take things next level. So, yeah, I mean, having a team is super important, like delegating and being able to know what to delegate and, and just trusting to, like, have people to support you, because we don't need to be the burnt out entrepreneurs. We don't need to be the people that are, like, doing everything, and it actually just doesn't work. And we almost have to kind of get over the fact that, like, we think it would be easier or better to do it ourselves, because maybe that
how do we get over that? Because that's the biggest thing that I hear from people when it comes to delegation. They're like, they won't do it right. It's like this control piece. So
yeah, there's a massive control piece in business. And of course it's your baby, right? Like, it's literally like when you're building a business, it's like birthing a child. Like, you put so much energy into that, and there's so much purpose and vision behind that. And so, you know, you don't want anything to go wrong, or you don't want someone to make the wrong decision. It's like, you have to get to a place in your business where you've got it, like, it's almost like separating yourself. It's like you're the custodian to the vision, right? Like, the vision's almost come through you. And if you look at it on, like, you know, a spiritual level or whatever, it's like, I believe we receive ideas that come to us for us to either action or not action. And so if we've got an idea and a vision, we bring that to life, and we start that, and we build the foundations of that. But then it no longer becomes about us. It actually becomes about the vision itself. And we need to almost get out of the way in order to allow the vision to do what it's here to do. And it's going to need people and feedback and resources in order for a vision to come to life. And so, yeah, this has been a big one because I always thought, oh, it's just easier to do everything myself, or, I don't have the time to train staff, et cetera, et cetera. And so I literally was just continuously burning out and repeating this same cycle. And I got to a point where I'm like, no, hang on, I need to pull myself out of this and just trust. And even if someone makes a mistake in my organization, okay, cool. Like, we've got things in place for when people make a mistake. Like, there's not as much control now. It's like, I really had to get to a point where I needed to surrender more and just like trust more, and then come and step back in if needed, or if we need to change staff, or if we need to do things differently.
But then, as you shared too, that keeps you in your magic and your strength of being the visionary. So then everybody benefits, because now you're playing to your specific magic, and that gets magnified, and everyone benefits. 100%. I feel you on that. And I think it is a learning that comes on that entrepreneurial journey. So, Kristie, you mentioned a couple books before that you recommend. Like, what would be, if you want to rattle those off again, but was there any other book that just was a pivot point for you, a powerful transformational experience?
The Big Leap was really, really, really fundamental on my journey.
Cool.
Jay Hendricks. Yeah. And then the other two was The Happy Pocket Full of Money and I'm a Badass at Making Money. I love I'm a Badass at Making Money because she is just full of sass.
Yeah.
And she's just like cheeky, and she just makes it, the whole thing of this journey that we're all on, really just fun. And you just read it going, oh yeah, she's my girl.
That's awesome. And then, hello, Bubba. 6 months, my goodness. So gorgeous. Oh my gosh. All right, don't worry. Mum's finishing up. So, Mum, if we put a message in a bottle, Kristie, or if the rest of this podcast got deleted and all we were left with was this one-liner that you would share with everyone, you're like, hey, team, this is what I've learned in life. This is what's really important. Please don't forget.
Oh. Gosh, oh my God, so many.
What would be the distilled, you know what I mean? Like, what's the nugget that's beneath?
Keep everything simple. Keep everything simple. Like, even when it comes to websites, everything that you're doing, don't try and overcomplicate everything. Keep everything just as simple as you possibly can. Everything doesn't need to be like fancy. It just, keep it simple. Like, keep the journey as simple as possible, and like, don't overcomplicate everything, like there's a lot of people that are on this path, but they're just really overcomplicating everything. They're overcomplicating business, strategy, mindset, all of it.
It's a strategy, isn't it, to like inhibit us? Complication is a form of confusion, which is a form of sabotage. I agree. I also just want to say, for anyone who's not watching this podcast on YouTube, Kristie is now breastfeeding her Bubba, and I just love that this is what we get to do in this modern reality of being all of ourselves. So, Beauty, I won't keep you from feeding. Oh my gosh, this is gorgeous. I won't keep you from that, but I just wanted to thank you for giving us your time, your wisdom. We're going to link to all of your stuff in the show notes. Everybody can follow along, learn from you in even more impactful ways. And I just want to thank you for the magic that you are, and the permission slip that you are, and who you be in the world, and the work you do. And we didn't even touch on, your Freedom Cacao and your Freedom events and all the things you do. Like, so many amazing brands, so many, just like big yeses. What you're putting out into the world is so heartfelt and so aligned for the collective to expand, that it's just really beautiful. And I salute you for all of that.
Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you so much. It's been really awesome to be here.
All right. Well, we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye. Big loves.